pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have asked, we don't have mics on.
Well, we can talk loud.
We can talk loud.
No.
If y'all can't hear us, just let us know.
Yeah,
You'll have to sit on the front row.
I know. He's a stroker back there.
Here comes the microphone.
Anyways, we have asked East Tennessee Development District to update us on where their progress is. And I see a kid is here tonight, so we will be going over that here in a second. But I do want to, we don't have any minutes to approve tonight, but I do want to make a quick note as a personal preference that Katie has decided to resign from the committee. So we will hand that over to the mayor. That's not anything we vote on or do anything with. She was well served, did a great job for us. We're happy to have her.
Yeah, we appreciate the service of Katie Clary on the committee, for sure. And I would ask you, would you like us to go out with another call for expressions of interest? We can do that, and we've still got a few more meetings to go. We're kind of getting down to the wire to some of the critical things, and it's important to have a sufficient mass of people. So if you like, we'd be happy to go out with another call for expressions of interest.
When was the last call? Because we have had one since, I know it was.
I think the last one was Sandy was the one that you applied to, almost a couple, 3 months ago.
I think about 3, maybe 4 months ago.
3 or 4 months ago,
I
so.
don't remember exactly.
Yeah, we could put out another call for expressions of interest.
I don't see any harm or foul, either one of you guys. Okay. All right, Mayor, we'll leave that to you. But anyways, we want to thank Katie for her service. I did run into Richard Way, and he did apologize. He has been taking care of his wife. Ran into him in Ace Hardware, and we chatted for a little bit. Still has a lot of interest, but I think this is a personal thing right now. So we will get on at this time. We'll go ahead and hand it over to Kim. Kim, whatever updates you might have to bring us up to date where you're at, we would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Before he gets started, since Galen just walked in the room, with our resignation of Katie, the mayor had suggested, and the committee didn't have a problem with it, going back to another, reaching out to the community again, see if anybody else wants to
Another
take
call
a
for
position, another
expressions.
call for expression.
Okay.
Was there any other calls for expression at the time that Sandy was chosen to come on?
Do you have anybody else on the list?
I don't know if there
I
was
don't
any.
remember, I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember right off.
Just curious.
I'll look.
Okay, well, I'll leave that with you. All right, Kim, I do apologize. Your mic.
Yes, I'm going to read through a memo that is an update of what we are going to be doing, what we understand we're going to be doing. Number one is that the planning team has started a review of the entire land use planning and transportation plan. We have discussed a 2-week timeline for all our team members to produce or submit their comments. That will be on the 1st, which is Labor Day, so therefore we will collect them on the 2nd. And within that week, by the close of 5th of September, that raw red line comment inserted version will be shared with CPAC leadership. Specifically, that means Dave, Houston, and the mayor, for them to pass it on to whomever else needs that information. The red light edits and review will constitute as the first the two-step process to conduct a high-level review, as was asked of us, of the land use and transportation plan. I will lead the effort to turn those comments, red line edits, into its initial composite form. The planning team will then have at least 1 week to review that version for submission to CPAC leadership. That submission deadline is the 15th, assuming that within that week we have all that, because I'll have to first turn it into a composite form, and then the members will have to then review it. Please note that this final composite form, please note that the final composite form for inclusion in the final publishable plan is not e-text to execute or deliver. The current team, as was mentioned in the meeting, is not responsible for developing and rewriting the composite document, and the provided content is meant to be incorporated by SE Group. Plus, e-text role is not to rewrite the plans, but to supply updated data and red line versions. One thing I would like to make sure that we also stress is that there are some data points in the document that were provided by local planning, and it's existent and its records are no longer in existence. It is an office that was shut down by the state, and when that was done, all the records from that office were distributed to all the client communities that local planning was servicing. So that information is non-existent, at least in terms of what we can access it. It's either not to be found, or it has been passed on to the cities that were client communities of local planning. We will also be providing an itemized bulleted list punch of implementation of recommendations, strategies, cautions to facilitate their inclusion by SE Group into the final document. And please note that these implementation steps will be offered as directed by CPAC without a full and exhaustive examination of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regs, a process and method we would not ideally advise. With also the understanding that the detailed implementation will be left up to the Planning Commission as it conducts its regular business, and also through such things as workshops, etc. So ETED will also be in an immediate liaison with the UTK's Boyd Center and the Baker School to cull data and information from the plan's Chapter 3, which is basically the socioeconomic trends with the economy chapter subsection. A timeline for that effort will be communicated after consulting with those UT centers. Please also note that under the economy chapter subsection, the data has already been provided for housing and employment under that subsection, which in the original document is labeled as economy. And please also note that under the economy subsection as well, and we've also provided, I just repeated what I just said, housing and employment. And we trust that the Boyd and the Baker Center will help us with industry, business permits, small businesses, and telecommunications data. Please also note that we have already provided population demographic data as well as housing data, and that content will be retrofitted to fit in the pre-existing format of the land use and transportation plan, fulfilling that apples to apples intent that CPAC has. So therefore, previous content developed and submitted, for example, the data will then again be retrofitted to the plan's pre-existing format. CPAC and or SE Group have not consulted our GIS person since we put together the initial consultation that was had, and after which some submissions were made to SE Group from ETED. We had a meeting between our GIS manager and also SE Group's GIS person. And the submissions that we made for the zoning map and the corporate limits map, we haven't had any feedback from that. The other maps we may be able to offer as well, which I think SE Group can also furnish for themselves, especially if we give them the base map, if indeed they need that, is a pre-existing future land use scenarios map that was done previously. I'm sure some of you may remember that was an exercise that was done by the Planning Commission. And then we can also provide a base map with some input as to that need. So our GIS manager may be able to assist with the provision of that map for use by SE Group, and that could include easily accomplished tasks by even SE Group in and of itself, or census tract boundaries, zip code boundaries, and I think we can also help with a major road plan. Chapter 2 was submitted back in the spring, and as was determined, it was also resubmitted recently after the troubleshooting meeting that we had on the 31st of July. So ETED will call out any and all recommendations in that chapter for placement in chapter 6, which is basically where we understand all implementation should be addressed, recommendations and whatever else. Anything that deals with implementation, we should put it in there and we list it as required. A conclusion subsection was made to chapter 2 after the 19th July meeting, after the understanding was that we wanted it to be apples to apples. So that information was developed, but then in hindsight, we also need to take all the recommendations and put it in the chapter 6. So that chapter has been done. We just need to call out the recommendations and put it in chapter 6. Okay? Now, the fluctuations and the stoppages, in addition to the lack of communication between CPAC, ourselves, and also SC Group, for example, chapter 2, led to us executing issue-specific content and chapters, like we did for data, zoning, and historic preservation in the interim. The idea was that we had to get on with our work, and with the understanding that when we provide that content, SC Group will be able to use it as they see fit, because they are responsible for the final development of the final report. But as I mentioned earlier, whatever we've done before, we can make sure it fits into the pre-existing format. For example, all the data that we collected, we will apportion it to the specific places in the current format of the pre-existing plan. Okay? So, an initial concluded round has also been executed this past Friday with the historic preservation chapter, and now she's in the throes of developing the final draft. We had a long, extensive workshop, myself and her, on Friday to go through that content to make sure that it was in keeping with what you are expecting for the plan. So, as we also discussed in that meeting, the goal is to develop the final plan on time, within budget, and with sufficient community input. We've provided some input in a number of times with some workshops, and that when we know furthermore about when we can get some information from the Boyd and the Baker Center, we do a lot of work with the Baker Center because we have a lot of interns coming out of that particular center, some of whom actually have come on to become regular staff members at our organization. So this is basically the progress report on what we've done so far and how we're going to be moving forward. I'll entertain any questions if you have any.
Ready?
Hey, Kim, if we just want to start at the top here, in 2 weeks, submission of comments for land use and, your staff review of the entire land use and transportation plan.
Yes.
So you guys are gonna go through the entire plan again, basically, and just come away with what's the goal of those comments and how does that fall to us? What is our job once you guys have put comments on there?
Okay, we will not be doing that document again. The last one we did was for the zoning ordinance, and then we did that also, yes, mainly for the zoning ordinance. But now you say you want it specifically for this plan. Pardon the misunderstanding on both our parts. But the idea now is to go through that document. We will not necessarily be doing a red line because our comments will all clash, our markups will all clash with one another.
Yeah.
So we're going to insert them as comments, like here do this, here you might want to do that. And then to make it a little bit more usable for you, we will then take all those comments and put them into a working narrative so that you have a summary of all those comments, section by section, such that after we do a review of that composite form, then we can hand it over to SC Group to develop the narrative as they see fit for the plan.
So what's the difference between that and the chapter 2 kind of rewrite that y'all did? What's the different process there?
Well, that is where in doing the composite form, that will meet the need, or let's say what we submitted before with chapter 2. So with chapter 2 as well, we did an extensive research. We went to meet with the NOx TPO, we contacted the Soil Conservation Department, we did a whole bunch of research on that. And out of that, we put that chapter together. That was a chapter that myself, in cooperation with my intern, I reviewed the document, I worked with her to do the frontline research, and I went back and forth, and then I developed it into that narrative. So the idea is that we will try to do the same thing with the comments that we execute for the entire plan.
Okay, so the socioeconomic trends that you said you're gonna go to to UT and to use that, their resources there, how does that process differ from the comment process? I think I'm just a little confused about these comments that y'all are adding versus updating the actual underlying data.
Sure.
And what's happening.
Well, you asked us to do a high-level review. That's the comments from the team is a high-level review.
Okay.
In terms of the specific data points, as I mentioned before, we've already provided some with you on socioeconomic data, including housing. Where the other sections are in the reports, we will then go to the Boyd Center to see if they have, which was once before, just simply named the Center for Business and Economic Research. So we'll get that information and then also populate that and give it to you as data that can be used to put into including the final version of the report.
Okay.
So back at number 2. The planning team, is that your planning team?
Yes, myself, Joe, Jordan, Laura, and some of our, 1 or 2 of our planning consultants that also service some of our client communities other than towns.
So timeline, as I see 1 and 2 right here, let me run back here to see if I can understand this. 2-week timeline for submission and comments, September 1, within the week, by close of day, September 5th. Okay.
Now, the hope for that, as I mentioned earlier, is that it will involve me putting the content of comments in composite form and working to put together a meeting. As you well know, a number of our staff members visit a whole bunch of communities. I have 5, some of us have as many as 12. And so I missed those busy schedules. We try to schedule a time to meet so we can do a final review of the composite content I developed before we hand it over to you.
So I've heard you say comments several times. I'm still confused with when you're adding comments to the document or your write-up version of it for submission to C group. Are you commenting hypothetically, or you're just saying this is what you recommend? Are you making recommendations and that's your word for comment?
We understand what you want, and we said it should be a vision. So we have given the vision to everybody. We have given your comments to everybody. We will give this to everybody, and based on these guidelines, they will then comment and review the document for any sort of, like you mentioned before, recommendations, cautions, I can't remember the actual terms.
I'm still, excuse me, I'm still, Mayor, maybe you can help me flesh this out. I'm still confused with the fact that this isn't a factual document here at this point. Can you help me?
I think I'm following it. So, and again, thank you very much for preparing this status and approach as we, get toward the end of this. So, work has already been done. on a number of these sections. So we've seen some of these things before, the housing, all the data, some of the things that are in section 3 and section 4, we've already seen. Section 2, we have. Section 1 is largely where we will put in the vision statement and other things that we've worked on. And then section 5 is the land use policies themselves, and section 6 is the implementation plan. So what I'm understanding is that ETDD will take all the comments that we've provided heretofore, and they will take a look at the work that they've done heretofore, including the data generation on housing and employment and other things, and that they will move it around as we request it. And so they're going to move the recommendations into the land use policies, and anything related to implementation, they'll move into the implementation section. So it's following what we asked them to do. And so Kim, your team will be doing that between now and September the 5th. And sometime thereabouts, we will get our first look at sort of what the whole thing looks like together.
Yes, so we would first, the one that has our review with the comments, we'll give it to you
Okay?
as that, because you asked for the raw
Yeah.
review.
Okay.
Then, to help you digest it,
Mhm.
we would then come and put it on in composite form, so that it is in some sort of narrative.
Okay.
And then, however which way SE Group chooses to rewrite it, edit it, and they might have a particular style on how they want to follow through with it.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
just be giving them raw narrative for them to use at their pleasure.
yeah, okay, so we'll get the red line version, plus we'll get what I would call the reader's guide. So sometimes
There you go.
when my staff gives me a long document, a long regulation or something, they'll sort of give me a reader's guide to help guide me through it and, understand what all this red line comments really mean. And so we'll get that, then we'll give some feedback on that. And ultimately, we will have to give a relatively well-developed piece over to SE Group, because their job is just to fit the pieces together.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at is that, when you develop a document, there's one person or one entity that has to
Hold the pen.
hold the pen. There you go, thank you. So,
Okay. But this is our opportunity, I think, coming up to see all of ETDD's inputs all together. It'll include the things we've already seen, chapter 2, the things from chapter 3 and chapter 4.
exactly.
It'll include some new things, because we're kind of working on a compressed timeline. It'll include those new things for chapter 3 that are more in the realm of socioeconomic that you'll get from the Boyd Center. And
Yes, and a good portion of it we've already done. So the housing, the data, the demographics, all that has already been done.
Okay.
Now we're just going to fit it into the puzzle,
Okay.
better format.
And then we'll have an opportunity to review it, discuss it, and polish it a little bit more. It'll be an opportunity for people to provide some additional feedback on it as it starts to take shape. We might need to take a couple of passes at it, I would imagine, just to make sure that we, make sure that it's got all the things in there that we've provided comments on that we think are important. And so I've mentioned several of them kind of over and over, I won't do it again, but there are a number of things that I think are very important for the city of Townsend, and that'll be our opportunity to make sure nothing is missing. And if anybody in the community wants to kind of see it coming together, we'll be able to say, okay, hey, here's something that you're missing, or maybe on this historical section, we've got some suggestions on that or something as well. So-
Yeah, so for example, something that was not covered prior, but is now will be included is historic preservation.
Okay.
Let me just include, if I might here, our next meeting is September 16th. So if this timeline goes off without a hitch, we should be able to get some documents out to the team ahead of time. Or at least so they can start reviewing, and then we can have a nice slow go. Like I say, it might take a couple passes and go through the document.
Yeah, we could have, I think, a pretty fulsome meeting on it by the
Yeah.
16th.
Okay.
Yes, that's the process.
September 16th?
Our only challenge is coordinating the calendars of all those planners that are here, there, and everywhere.
Understood,
So-
understood, yeah.
And barring that, my second thing is to send it out to them and ask them to electronically say yay, nay, that kind of stuff.
If we could be on schedule there, September 16th, that'd be awesome for us.
I will make sure to transmit that the importance of that date to the team.
Thank you. Okay.
I've got a couple of
Go ahead,
questions,
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
With respect to the local planning office and any of those previous records, we may not be able to get access to those. I don't know if it was something that the city would have, but is there anything that you think is really needed there or anything critical among the previous records?
No, I think everything that we've already done with the UT data center suffices. The one thing that will be a challenge is one of the maps specifically. Is a map that shows the gradients, the topography of Townsend in terms of the percentage of the slopes.
Yeah, okay.
And that
I know
will be
what you're
impossible to
talking
get.
about, yeah.
Exactly. So that's the one, yes.
Okay.
Exactly, that one, yes.
Okay, so this is one we don't have.
Yeah, this is the one that would more than likely not be in the report.
But I would guess, is this something that the GIS people could produce?
What I'm trying, yeah, my second point is, or my more important point is that this is something that we cannot produce with a quick turnaround. And these maps, given that we have one GIS person servicing 52 cities and 16 counties, this is not something that is a quick exercise in terms of, because these are data sets that we don't keep,
Right.
that we're not in the business of generating.
Okay. As I'm looking at this map is dated January of 2010,
Okay.
and it is primarily about slopes. So it has different colors, and the different colors indicate 0 to 6.9% slope, 7 to 14%, 15 to 25, and a grade steeper than 25%. Now that's important to us because we're in a mountain area, and so it's useful to have the slopes, but I don't think the slopes have changed
Yes.
in Townsend since
Yes.
2010.
It's-
So this map might still be good. The only other thing that's on here are the corporate limits. And I don't know how much that has really changed either, but we could take a look at that.
We already provided a corporate limits map already.
Okay.
Yeah. Now with that map, even though we have that information set, it's not simple that we can just generate it. We'll have to make sure that all the vectors are correct. We have to make sure that there is information to back up those vectors. We have to make sure that those vectors can be mapped onto this with accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? So it is not something that from a paper copy to a geospatial soft copy will be an extensive effort which cannot be done with a quick turnaround.
Well, there's some other data sets here that it's talking about that might still be available to us. It says the slope grid is derived from USGS digital elevation for Blount County, and the flood data was obtained from digital flood insurance map data set for Blount County. So maybe the county still has access, if not to this information, maybe
Okay.
something similar.
I will talk to our GS manager and see how she can get that done, and then we'll send some communication to you about
Let's
the process, how that is actually to be achieved.
Yeah, let's talk about that because flooding is something that I want to make sure that we address here. And I'm not 100% sure that, FEMA flood maps in the last 10 years are the most relevant thing. I would like to see if maybe somebody over at UT could help us to generate a flood map with rainfall that actually happened over on the other side of the mountain. If we had the same amount of rainfall, what would that look like? And I wonder if there's somebody at UT that could help us.
We will work with that. As I said, one of the things we could do is to work with the with the Void Center
Yeah.
to figure out if that information was there. And I'm sure also Doug, I will contact Doug's contact with FEMA as well to see how we can to help.
Would the committee agree, is that something we ought to prioritize, is flooding?
There's an awful lot of language in some of this stuff I've been reading about flooding that's absolutely positively ridiculous.
Tell us.
Well, let me find out which one it was. It talks about, well, it starts out in the climate section. You got air quality. There's a lot of unnecessary words and verbiage in there for a 20-year, 10-year plan. Let me find the flooding. It talks about Townsend's drainage patterns heavily shaped by the presence of the Little River. Okay, that's a fact. No catastrophic floods have occurred recently. Several events have demonstrated the river's capacity to overflow and disrupt normal drainage flows. Okay, we know it has flooded in Townsend. Even if it flooded to the degree that Hurricane Helene provided in western North Carolina, something like that I don't think belongs in a plan like what we're developing. We're not, you cannot plan for everything. So this talks about 51.7% of properties in Townsend are currently at risk of flooding. And that's going to remain stable. It increased 0.2%, they say, in the next 30 years. Heavy rainfall is always a concern. The city's greater vulnerability may come from, and it talks about hurricane-related systems. It says, and yes, we do participate, but FEMA does an okay job. There, it says the city is engaged with flood mitigation programs and initiatives from the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. I'm not familiar what those are, so I want someone to explain that. And a proposed regional stormwater detention pond under Mont County Emergency Management. I'm not familiar with that for Townsend. And it talks about this plan and how it has to coordinate. But then it talks about all the damage. Let me see where it talks about damage that has occurred and how vulnerable we are. And I have no idea what that's talking about. Reducing vulnerability, especially in agent, where does it talk about that? I do not know where I read that. I want to know what damage has occurred to property and land in Townsend with the flooding that we've had in the past. Because there was a big section about flooding damage that we've experienced, and I don't know where that's at. What kind of damage have we had?
The history of the damage was got from the previous report. And the discussion about the risk is what we have mentioned. If you want anything more than that, I would suggest you tell me what exactly you're looking for so I can go find it. But the history of your flooding problems is in the current document. As you said, you wanted it updated. So we've updated it to address risk. And one of the things that we specifically mentioned is that Townsend should look into a retention pond for the overflow of flooding. That is a routine thing that cities require. And this is like Jefferson City, because of the phenomenon of the river. They always want to make sure that every single property that is prone to flooding or adjacent to a waterway has some retention pond capacity. Otherwise,
What would that look like in real life in Townsend?
it would basically be something similar to a dormant reservoir, for which when there's overflow, that the water can go into that pond and then seep out slowly into the drainage system and dissipate without causing damage to that property or adjacent properties. And also, most importantly, that it also doesn't flood roadways. So they want to make sure that your property, your plot, your lot can manage overflow such that it doesn't destroy adjacent properties and roadways.
Thanks, Sandy. I think this is one of those times where we're butting up against like the ideals of what we should plan for in terms of like what gold standard planning is, and then the reality of what Townsend can do. Like, you know, what public land can we build that on? You know,
There's
and
so much
so.
stuff in here doesn't apply ever to town.
Well, that's what, and that's, I mean, I think that's been a central question of this whole process is like, do we, you know, we've talked about the Tuckaleechee Valley, we've talked about the Tuckaleechee Cove being kind of the bigger picture, and so in some ways, like, you know, the old Laurel Valley Lake is a good example of what could be a retention pond if we were to think about it like that or something, and like, I guess we could do that, but I mean, it is in strict sense outside of our government zone, you know? And so, you know, I too have kind of struggled with this part of the process myself of knowing something is physically impossible for us to do inside of Townsend, or physically unlikely for us to do in Townsend, yet still including it because that is best practice if something changed in the future. So I'm kind of with you on this one. I'm not sure where to draw the line.
Yeah, exactly, because it is not germane to Townsend until it becomes germane to Townsend. Just like how what happened in Asheville. Asheville, what they were.
Yeah.
And are we talking about like one major retention pond? I'm just thinking of local ones that, like, there's one between the Heritage Center and Archives that is built just for that property. So, I mean, if we added something like that to our guidelines, like, hey, if you're building,
Thank you.
you could add this in, but the city as a whole is not talking about taking up 10 acres to build a retention pond.
There you go, thank you for that qualification.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the idea, Logan. The first thing is to get the facts out. What are the facts? What are the slopes? The slopes haven't changed. What might change are rainfall projections. And so you have to have the facts. And so if you have a certain level of rainfall, the fact is it's going to roll downhill. It's going to come right straight down, you know, Thunderhead Prong, and it's going to come at the Y, and it's going to, the Little River's going to come up. We know what the facts are, but then you have the options. Well, okay, maybe a retention pond is one option. Maybe there's
How big
multiple.
would that pond have to be?
Well,
That's
hold on a minute. This plan doesn't say do a retention pond. The plan gives options. And so it may be that a retention pond is not feasible. That's okay. That's okay. You have a range of options. If you don't think a retention pond is feasible, we can't afford it, we don't have a good place for it, you know, well, that's fine. Then what are your other options? Well, your other options are you need to alert people. You might need to use your app. You might need to put a siren in, depending on how quickly the water might come up. There are other options. The goal of this plan is just to say, hey, this is something that Planning Commission needs to pay attention to.
So I think in taking all this content, I would say, Logan, to your comment to you, is once they come in with whatever extreme they come in with, we are the committee. We'll go through this and we'll pitch out what doesn't belong and bring in what does belong, because then we can gear it towards Townsend.
Yeah, it's
Well,
got
and
to
not-
be good for towns.
And not just in flooding, in all areas of this document.
Let me repeat something, okay? What we are recommending, we don't recommend that you outright just toss it aside. What Logan is saying is what I want to repeat, because I think she gets what I'm trying to get at, is that we're not asking, or will not be recommending a big huge reservoir somewhere in Townsend where Townsend needs to. What we're saying is that as Jefferson City requires that every single plat addresses the site's capacity, given the development, to cater to an inadvertent flood from heavy rains or whatever else. An engineer will have to include on the plat how they have address a retention pond for that specific site that is looking for development, such that that site doesn't contribute to any flooding on adjacent property owners and on the roadway. So for example, in one plot in Jefferson City, the gentleman wanted to build some storage units, and right at the top, the crest, he had the storage units, but it comes on a steep slope to the roadway. Across the street is a gentleman who operates a grain silo, and he has millions of dollars of, I don't know what you call it, grain. So one of the concerns for the planning commission was that assure us that your retention pond will seep safely under the road to the infrastructure, rather than go across the road and flood his property
Like your neighbor.
and risk his grain silo.
So for each development, I can understand drainage, that roof is going to create, I can see that. But nothing what you spoke of would ever be considered what Helene brought.
And
You
I'm sa-
can't plan for that.
And I'm not saying that you should plan for that. I'm saying that one of the issues in Little River adjacent Townsend is that you should consider the potential risk that you might not think might ever come. But when it comes, don't say that you chose to toss it out and somebody comes and says the city was advised to do it. The city chose not to do it. So maybe I can take some legal action against the city. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Or read on it. So like it says, like as a fact, the city is engaged with flood mitigation programs, including initiatives from the TEMA and a proposed regional stormwater detention pond from Blount County Emergency Management. Is that fact? Like is that like what y'all found, or is this like what the next case would be?
Please read it again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So the question generally though is like, is the way this is it written as current fact? Or is it written as like, once this is published, we should work towards making this fact?
Yes, it could be current facts, which you are able to fish out. But what we're saying is that you should work to make certain things action, to make it a fact. Because it is something that may put you at risk. It's something that is good practice for planning. And it's something that could also put you at risk of legal action.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, I think so. I think the reading through the chapter 2 that we've read over, I think literally my only feedback on it is being like incredibly clear when something is fact now versus we need to work towards something else. And that's kind of in recommendations, right? And I know we're trying to split that out, but I think that's where I felt a little angst in here. Besides that, I felt like it was pretty solid.
All right,
So,
okay.
yeah.
I'll take that on advice.
I think that's right. I'd like your point too, Vice Chair, that we need to make sure that this is fit for Townsend. I did have some time recently to look at the Blount County emergency plans, and my recollection, there's 4 hazards that they are addressing there. There's hurricane or tornadoes, earthquake, flooding, and wildfire. And if you look at what happens in Townsend, it's been a long time since we've had any sort of tornado activity or even an earthquake in Townsend. But what we do get, we get high winds. But what we do get is wildfire and flooding. And if you look at those sections of the Blount County plan, I think they're in the process of being updated. I might have gotten something recently about that. But those are the things that are, there's relatively more attention to other hazards that are not the ones that are, in my mind, the highest priority for Townsend. So we need to make sure that we prioritize and make sure that whatever is in this plan is fit for Townsend. If there's stuff in there that doesn't happen here very often, well, then maybe we can be a little lighter on that. So Sandy, I think.
And what are they doing in their plan to plan for these extravagant events that may take place?
Well, that's right, and so we have to look and see how do we fit into their plan. So it's important for us to understand what's in their plan and what's not in their plan. And when something happens, what can we count on them to do versus what do we sort of need to be planning for more specifically ourselves. And so we know, 1994 flood stage 15 feet above the current banks of the river. That's fact, there's data on that. We know how high the road is. We know the two places where when the water comes up to the road, where it's going to happen. And I think we can get some sort of projections looking at rainfall. The people in North Carolina didn't think that would ever happen either. People in Texas didn't think that was going to happen.
Exactly, that's what I was about to say.
But it's our responsibility as the people that are sitting in the seat now to think about it. And it doesn't mean that, we have to do every single option, but we need to at least say what Townsend needs to be thinking about going
I
forward.
think one of the ways we described it early, like many minutes ago, was we just have to feel and dream what's possible here.
Yeah, another good example is, would you want to think about, would you want to consider, would you want to make sure that you have shown some evidence of interest, some study, if not decision-making or action? For example, an early warning system, that when the floods reach a certain level, an alarm goes off or whatever, that people know that there's a high water thing coming in, so get to higher ground or something like that. That's what didn't happen in Texas. They actually discussed it. They said they would not do it, and then it happened.
So I can see a warning system. I can see letting the people know. But how are you ever going to plan for being flooded out completely in this town? What plan could you have? How
That's
could you
nature's
ever
way, that's-
include anything that would benefit us?
So I think, like I said, I think the best thing from my viewpoint is to, obviously, this is the information that's available now compared to the information that was available in 2010. We see fit to put in this document what we feel need is a high elevation implementation. Like there's new warning systems, there's new evacuation systems. These need to be considered by the city commission and the planning commission.
It's a
But-
real tangible thing that we can do.
Yes, but in this document I don't believe there should be mention of a reservoir, a product. That's not the work of this committee. I think the work of this committee is to make the people, the commissions, aware of the new information that is, and the new technology that is available. I was here in '94, and I can tell you, we know where that reservoir is. It's right at that end of town over there. That's where the reservoir is.
Sure.
Because we got stuck in Townsend, but it was only
30 minutes, 40 minutes.
yeah, overnight, and the next day we were out. And I think I've seen it a lot in the commission meetings. Mary can attest to that. There's been a lot of discussion about emergency systems and emergency communications. And I can see us as a committee making sure that those are recommendations in this document for massive flood. There's only one, water goes that way. We all know that. There's only two ways in this town.
We are going to give our recommendations. What you choose to throw out,
Yes.
that's not, but we will give it to you. We have record that we gave it to you, and there'll be records that you chose to not do it.
Yeah, this group will not be implementing anything, but it's our job to sort of do the thinking, get the facts, and be able to put it in a useful document that will guide the planning commission and the city council.
I have one quick question before we turn it back over to the committee. And then you say on the second page, up there in your please note, in B, we trust Boyd and/or Baker may help us with this industry. Have you nailed them down to, or do they have a commitment with you?
No, we haven't contacted them yet at all. So
Okay.
I'll be contacting them tomorrow and asking them for that information to see what they can do for us. And if need be, we will have a constant presence. Well, I won't say presence. let's say due to my pressure, I will have a sustained effort to get that information from there.
Houston? Mayor, go ahead. Were you done with your?
I think I'm generally done with that, but I'm really pleased that we had this meeting, and I would endorse this plan and approach. There's still a fair amount of work to get done, so we will have to start to, focus in on what our timelines are, and depending on how it all comes together, adjust as necessary. But we are, at these important stages. We've had a lot of good discussions up to this point, but I think we're at that stage where rubber meets the road, and
Yeah.
16 sounds like it's going to be a really good meeting.
And as always, if there's content that comes out that we have to review, we're not above calling extra meetings. We've done that in the past, we'll do it again. We feel like we're rounding third, heading home, and I think we're ready to tag the base here. I don't see in my notes here, I think everything's been addressed. As far as dates and timeline, I would say on September 16th. So just pushing out here, September 6th, Kim, the middle of September, by the middle of September, all this content will be, start to get flushed to SE Group.
We're going to give it to you. You deal with SE Group.
Okay.
We're just,
Okay.
the past communication didn't work, so we're just going to give it to you.
We'll make sure that they get it, and then we'll work with them as far as the timeline for completion. But you see yourself completed with us at what date?
I do not know yet. I will know after I spoke to
After Boyer Baker?
the Boyd Center, and then after we do that, that composite narrative, then I'll know. I can give you another indication.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, any questions? I think that gets me. Sandy?
Still kind of
Please.
cloudy and
Okay.
can't get a plan to me is a plan. This climate trends that everybody's talking about, all this climate stuff, come out with recent flooding events that have already impacted local roads and property. Impacted the roads, it closed it for a while. Is that what that means? Highlight the need for resilient infrastructure and careful land management. Then it speaks of resources such as TDOT's Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan. What is that? And climate tools like the Climate Explorer provide valuable data and strategies for adapting to these changes. But the changes haven't happened, so these are all what ifs. And planning with these factors in mind help ensure towns will remain safe, sustainable, thriving community. Well, I can see that we want it to be safe, sustained community. But some of this language in here is kind of pie in the sky kind of stuff. Not a document in a plan. The way that my mind registers this stuff.
So I'm hoping with that content, with that consultant and the other consultant, and a couple of reviews by us, that by the time, this is the only way I can see it done, is by the time the document goes to print, what needs to be in there stays in there. What needs to be flushed out, even if Kim said, whatever, you want to flush out. Seems like going to a lot of work, but I do understand
Yeah, but,
why they're submitting what they're submitting.
okay. And-
But I understand our job too, and that's case in point. That's why you're sitting here on this committee, also,
Yeah.
is to help us with that, flushing that out.
And I don't know what chapter this was, but all that stuff about parking lots in each end of town and all of the housing and all of that stuff that's in here, this is not intended to be part of the land use and transportation plan, is it?
I don't know, I think parking is something that we ought to be thinking about. As we have people that are coming into the city to visit us, they, for a while, where's everybody gonna park? And so,
What would they be coming here for? Shopping?
visit, to live,
visit, to live. I got parking in my house, I got parking at my businesses. I don't get that we need
I can answer
parking.
that.
We might need to think a little bit about parking and, you know, I wouldn't say that having some discussion on parking, it would be out of the scope necessarily of this land use and transportation plan.
Maybe for our, unfortunately for us, I think our job is to discuss literally all of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the definition of what we're up here for, and whether we choose to include it is.
And we have to consider our city limits. Yes.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, is that's the nuance here, and one of the things that we worked through in the first 6 or 8 months was it's aspirational for the code and practical for the city.
Yep, that's right.
Sandy, you still have a question mark?
Well,
I can see it on your
and
face.
you alluded to the fact that it's not over yet, and it's 6 o'clock.
So
we're not-
let's, yeah, no, I think this content here, obviously, I would run through it with a highlighter, and I will do that myself. And, because I think when we meet as a team to start fleshing the
Yeah.
content out, is then we can go right to it, and, because there is a lot of content. So I appreciate the fact that there's a lot more technology, a lot more smart people available that want to assist the city of Townsend, but because we live in Townsend, or we're Townsend residents, the majority of us, the reason that this document is staying like this is the simplicity of the process. So I think somewhere between, those folks and us folks is the right answer. And I'm hoping that's what gets flushed out by the time we go to print this document. And we will make sure. Any questions, committee? Mayor, any final thoughts? Kim, appreciate you updating us to where you were at. I like the timeline, seeing this mid-September by our next meeting here. Just so everybody knows, September 16th will be our next meeting here at 5 o'clock. Come with bells on. We should have a lot of content to go through.
Hopefully we'll be able to see parts of it before
Yes.
the meetings.
Anytime anything gets emailed to me, I'll just forward to.
Kind of a slow reader at times.
Um,
Takes a while to absorb.
Let's open up for good of the community. Anybody want to make any comments or anything? Don, you got anything?
Comment about the parking, you asked where they're going to park. The zoning book explicitly says so much parking for different types of businesses, residents, and whatever. That's already taken care of. And another comment about the flooding. We can't control that Little River watershed from the Y up. Water's going to flow downhill fast, and then it's gone. There's no way that you can put a retention pond to catch velocity of water that comes out of that national park. Period. Use some common sense.
And when I was here in '94, obviously, and the faster it came down, I think the best course of action at that time that I remember living here on Mountain Avenue was keeping all the tree limbs and stuff out of the bridges there so the water could escape Townsend. But, I think that's, I agree with you there.
I'm sorry.
When the rains came in '94, the best course of action was making sure the trees weren't clogging up the water leaving Townsend.
Did you see somebody moving the trees?
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying,
That's nature.
that's the only thing you could
That's right.
make compensation for, but not water. The water was moving fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fast moving water. You
Yeah.
can't control that.
But it was the
All
next,
of your retention ponds in the
Oh,
world
yeah.
can't control this fast moving water.
but it got out here, I think I remember when the senators came up and everything to do the tour on the old road, because it got hit the hardest. That water was out of here in a day. It was gone very, very fast. Man. Quite an experience for me just moving here a couple of years before.
And then everybody pulled together and went to the flooding homes and
Yeah.
helped them move their stuff out. I mean, it's just what you did.
Yeah, we pushed the mud out of people's homes, yeah. Any final comments? We thank everybody for coming out tonight. Appreciate the committee for showing up. Ken, thank you again. Call this meeting, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I moved to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All approved? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks for coming out.